with To the Trade, and I have a special guest here, Kevin Twitty. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, Laurie, how are you doing?
I'm so excited to chat with you. This is so exciting. I'm really happy for all of our interior design community members to finally meet you. You were a member of the month, and now they get to see you in person. Yay.
We're gonna have a good time.
We're going
It's
to have a
gonna
good
be
time.
such a fantastic time.
Yeah. So we're going to start way back in the beginning. How did you decide you really wanted to become an interior designer?
All right, so it's kind of a long story, but I'll
No,
shorten it
go
just a
for
little
it.
bit. So, growing up, I grew up in a German immigrant household. My family is from Germany, and my opa, my grandfather, is actually a mathematician and kind of worked his way up. And so my whole life, it was all about math and science and all of these things. That's the path forward, was kind of what was preached at me. And I am good at math and not so great at science. But I went to college my first semester and I was an accounting major of all things. Funny enough, I do my own accounting still.
Wow.
But in between my first and second semester, I fell into a job where it was at a wholesale showroom in Dallas, Texas, where I was doing visual displays for this like 13,000 square foot showroom. So, storefront windows all the way down to just little knickknacks on shelves that needed to be sellable for, say any kind of mom and pop shop coming in and buying for their stores. And after my first day of working there, I got home, my mom was still awake, and it's past midnight. I'd had like a 14-hour day, and she asked me about how it went. And I just kept raving and raving and raving about it. And she saw the light in me.
Yeah.
She started crying and was like,
Aw.
wow, I've never seen you so excited and so happy about something. This is what you're supposed to do.
Oh my God.
So,
No,
yeah,
it's so hilarious that you say that because, my daughter is like, she's incredibly amazing at the arts. She's always been, she wouldn't, in like her, in middle school, she was, winning art awards. I always like dreamed she would go into this sort of career because she's like so
like super
super
creative. Yeah.
talented at it. And she is very like organized and analytical too. So that could have helped her in business, even like her first job that was like she actually ended up going to just the finances. We joke,
So we have the
we
opposite
joke
paths.
I was like, you really want to be a doctor? Oh, like we're probably
Well,
the only parents
it's,
in the world that were like, because my husband's in
yeah.
the arts too. So we're like, he is a graphic artist and I've been in the art. We've both been in the arts our whole career. So we were like, we're the only parents in the world that were like, you really want to be a doctor? Seriously? We could help you in the arts. You know what I mean? Like, it's just,
I think that is hilarious.
no.
It's like her and I, we high fived on the way to
Yeah, just
career
went up
paths. So
Zoom. Yeah, like
it's
that's
fun.
exactly what happens. But your kids do what they, doing what they love and seeing that
Yeah.
joy in your children is like honestly, I I was just having a conversation with my husband today about it. We were talking about just some moment in our daughter's lives that she just you can just see the joy in your kids
Mhm.
and that they are so stinking proud of themselves and they get
Yeah.
it and they're like and there's no drug out there happier that'll make you happier than that. Honestly, it's like the best feeling in the world to see your kids get
Well, and so many people just in general, fall into careers or jobs or things that
sure.
they don't love.
Well, I
Or,
think that
some
so many
people don't
people
have the opportunity to explore that either.
absolutely. I think you're 18 is so young to decide what it is you want to do with your life. You're just kind of like, okay, and so you pick something because you're forced to pick something. And then you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I guess, and you take the first job doing that and you're like, I don't know, maybe I like it, maybe I don't. Maybe I like there are parts I like of it, there are parts I don't like it about it. And I think people just get complacent. That is
Yeah, we get pot committed and we get that fear.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
think of like when we were children, we were fearless,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And as we become adults, we're like, oh, I'm afraid, because you see
Well,
stuff
there's
happen
money and
to
there's responsibility
and
and
it's money.
there's things that you have to pay. Like, you can't just go, "Oh, I really wanna try something new," because you have bills to pay. You know what I mean? Like, from the
Yeah, the
time
whole like
you're
starving artist thing.
starving
It's like, I
artist.
don't want to starve.
No, no, and I think that's and no one was I think this is a career that people would steer a child away from because they
Yeah.
don't know it, they don't understand it. It's a whole group of clients that you think it's almost unachievable. Like, how are you gonna meet people that can
Well,
afford a
it's
designer, you know?
interesting that you say that, because, when it was hard. I feel like sometimes it was a little harder for me to come out as an interior designer than
Right,
is
yeah.
gay to some people, because, they take it so non-serious.
Yeah,
And then even like with my own family, coming from a very strict, like every 6 weeks we had our report card at school. Like I had to turn over a copy of that to my grandparents, because my Opa wanted to know what my grades were to make sure I was staying on the right path and all these things. So there was all this like immense pressure kind of growing up to, be perfect and to make good grades, because I'm getting into the sciences and the maths, not the arts. So then
right,
telling him, hey, by the way, I'm going into the arts, which, funny enough, I consider it still a science, right? Like
right,
interior design is the science of how humans interact with spaces,
right,
which is why our degrees are human science degrees, not art degrees.
right,
But there's so much artistic liberty that we get and so much art in what we do. It was interesting, because I remember being told, oh, well, you'll never make a living that way.
right. Oh, I think that that's a lot of people, and honestly, for the designers that come into this industry as a second career designers, and some of them are just killing it in the design industry because they were bank managers or they were
Mhm.
attorneys or they were, something in business that makes them have the business side of the design business
And
covered.
that's almost more important than the
Yeah,
design side itself. I
yeah,
say, creativity can be kind of taught and sharpened and all these things, but that business acumen is the hardest thing to learn. And I think that's why most creatives do fail,
yes.
is because they don't understand that we're not doing this for fun. I mean, we're having
We're
fun,
having
but we're doing
fun.
this
We
to make
want
a
we
living.
want to we wanna make things beautiful, and we wanna and
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I tell people when I'm talking about what design is, because, I mean, I still educate so many people out there in the world what and in DMs, I get we our following is, obviously very interior designer forward, but we
Yeah.
actually occasionally will get people who literally write to me and say, "I wanna be a good client. I'm trying to learn how to be a good client. And I don't, I would love a designer to work with a designer someday. And this is what my goal. And this is, I've even had people write to me and say, how much should I say? We're going to buy a house. I'm married. I want to buy a house and I want to hire a designer. How much should I put away for that? Like, I want to know so I can start
Wow.
saving
Yeah.
for that. And, I love people like that. I love the people who are like, are in there thinking that we're just complaining for complain like, yes, there are funny
Yeah.
memes about clients sometimes and the frustrations of the job and the fears of the job and but it's really in good fun and of like connecting the community with those feelings.
Yeah.
And, I think the byproduct is that the clients really do need to hear that this is how you guys all feel, sometimes. Like
Yeah.
that this is not easy to, you know, you're constantly in the middle, you're constantly trying to, uh, really almost embody that client and be who they
Yeah.
are
We
and
are we are interpreters, right? So like
interpreters. Yes.
we're interpreting, we're trying to read their mind if they don't
Yes.
tell us things.
Yes.
So we're trying to interpret that and interpret those like nonverbal cues. And we're trying to interpret what they're saying to the contractor as well. And what the
Right.
contractor or the trades are saying, we're trying to interpret that and package it in a way that's palatable to them,
Right.
because there's so much technical behind things that we have to kind of, I always say, like, talk, sometimes we have to talk to each other like we're kindergartners so we can understand each other, right? Because
Absolutely, absolutely, and to be able to manage emotions during the process and understand.
what, designing a house is emotional?
Very, very emotional, and there's a lot to and then, of course, there's always the things that are out of your control too, that you can't that you
Oh
really
yeah.
that you can't anticipate happening, and then you have to deliver the bad news on a daily basis. And I also think like the ego thing of the designer too, like the designer themselves. So you have an ego, and you have to nurture that ego so that you have the confidence to do what it is that you're doing and to have that authority, but it's constantly being beat up because
Yeah.
it's,
Can we just like lean into it's okay to have an ego,
oh,
or like it's
absolutely.
okay to be like to have narcissism. Like it's okay
Yeah. In some
to have
areas,
this in the
yeah,
right
in
way.
the right way, because it's very important for you. I think a healthy ego is really important for a designer. I mean,
Yeah.
understanding and empathy is important too, but I think that you need to have some sort of strength within yourself to constantly be, I don't wanna say beat up a little bit because it's like you know, you're constantly you're delivering bad news on a regular
Yeah.
basis, and you're that never feel the feedback from that never is wonderful. You know, no one wants to hear
It's
that.
interesting.
Yeah.
I'm all about managing expectations. Like,
Sure.
so from the very beginning with clients, I tell them, we are in your house. We are a disruption.
Yeah.
We are causing chaos in your day-to-day
Yeah.
life. You will get frustrated.
With
You
me.
will get
Yeah.
angry. You will get tired. And I said, it might be at me. It may just be because you're 4 months into this 8-month project. It may just be you had a bad day at work and I had to tell you that your tile was delayed. And I always say, you can unload that on me. I will sit there and listen. We'll take it and then we will talk about it.
You're better than I would be because I would be like, "You better not unload that on you better not unload that on me. You better hold that in, and you can unload it
My
on your
life my
husband
life
or
is so
whatever."
drama free though that I love, like, I'm like, "Just unload it." It's like, "Just come on.
I
It's
love
fine.
that.
Get
I
it
love
out."
that for you. I love that journey for you because, I mean, I think there's so many designers out there that would take that so personally and would
Yeah.
carry that home with them, and, you know, that dynamic is so tough. How do you
Mhm.
feel about now you have a great group of friends in the design community too, and, you know, how do you feel that the community of designers has been to you in your journey of becoming a designer? Are they welcoming, or do you feel like there's room for improvement in how designers communicate with one another? What is your feeling about that?
That's a very, like, layered question,
Yeah,
right? It depends on where you are in your career and,
sure.
where you are in whatever city you're introducing yourself into. So I started design in Dallas and I worked for a firm. And so it was different because I already had this kind of community that had been created before I was there. And so they were dialed into different networking things and they were dialed into the different networking and organizations and nonprofits. And so the community was there and the firm I worked at was highly respected as well. And so I didn't feel like I had a struggle
Right.
because,
You were instant
people almost
approval.
instant
Yeah.
instant approval. And so where I actually, interestingly enough, found my struggle is, my husband and I moved to Portland, Oregon about 8 years ago now. And before that, we actually, it's a long story. We quit our lives and traveled for a year and a half out of a backpack overseas.
Okay.
And so
No, I really hear
we'll
about that.
table that. We'll table
We'll
that.
segue. Yeah.
But then, a year and a half later, we moved to Oregon, and I still had, over a decade worth of clients built up in Texas. And so I was flying back and forth to Texas. Mostly, like 99% of my clients were in the Dallas area still, even after I'd started my business and lived 2,000 miles away in Portland. And so, trying to dial myself into a new community, it was hard,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it was this weird, like, I'm a designer that's been doing this for 10 years at that point, and I know what I'm doing, and I have discerning clients, and I have big projects, and I can handle all of these things. But then in this new city, I look like this new guy.
Yeah.
Like, who's this new person
Yeah.
coming in?
Yeah.
And what are your credentials and how are you even worthy, or it felt hard, and especially in the Pacific Northwest in general. If you've ever heard of the Seattle freeze, or the Pacific Northwest is really great at like passive aggressiveness and all of this. It's like it's not that. It's more everyone's a close-knit community here. Everyone cares about local, local, local and supporting all of that. And when you're not from the local, it's hard to get into that local scene.
Right, right.
So it was a little more of a struggle when I moved here. I would say took me about 2.5 to 3 years to really just get a couple toes in the door. And then
Oh,
it wasn't
wow.
until about year 5, actually, that it's like, oh, people knew who I was. I was becoming more
Right,
like respected in this community. But it was a lot of work. I networked the hell out of everything. I do tons of coffees and happy hours and just meetings and getting to know the person, not necessarily saying, hey, give me business, but like, hey, who are you? Let's become friends, because
right.
we all know that when you become friends and build trust, then other things will happen. And so it was a long journey. And but there was a great support of designers here that I had found that felt very similar, because there's a lot of the old guard, so to say, like
Oh,
all the
there is.
designers who've been doing it for 30 or 40 years in the city, who, you get so busy, you become complacent and you
Yeah,
just stay, you don't go out to events anymore and you don't do this. And so I got here at the time that the city was kind of turning into these younger, fresher designers were really starting to pop up. So that community has built tremendously and very quickly, I would say, over the past 3 to 4 years.
yeah.
So I'm forever grateful for that, for
Oh,
sure.
that is fantastic. And I want to encourage designers that are out there and experiencing the same thing, reach out to me. I had a designer, honestly, who is building a business in Canada, and she is, trying to build the business and meet other designers and look for like offshoot work. And we're gonna, you know, I built this database, in the past couple of years where we have interior design community online. And I don't know if you know our history, but we started originally on Google Plus. We went to Instagram because Google Plus died. So I was at 100,000 on Google Plus back in the day. And,
Wow.
then you have to build everything all over again. And we're at over 100,000 now on Instagram. But you're building on borrowed land when you're building in social media. And so owning our own
Mhm.
website and having traffic and having a good email database and having a good like CRM was really always going to be the goal, because you own it. You're not dependent on
Yeah.
anyone else. And so we built a CRM the last few years. It was very expensive and very time consuming, but the whole goal was to give that to design. I mean, eventually the goal for interior design community is that you all own it. So
Mm.
but in that, it's a useful tool for all of you. So while we don't ever intend on having like chapters or things like that, I think the ASID and KBA are so great at those kinds of things. We do want to connect designers with one another.
Well, it's interesting. It's like I've been a part of a whole bunch of different organizations
Sure.
over my career, and the most connection I've gotten is through the interior design community, right? It's through your platform.
Yeah.
And it's, like even like the networking thing that we did at KBiz.
Yeah.
I still talk to so many of those people on a
I love
day-to-day
it.
basis. Or like I had a project in another city, in another state. And so I reached out to one of the designers saying, hey, who do you use for your receiving?
Yeah.
Who do you trust for this? And it was such a welcoming, because you already create this welcoming
Well, that's the vibe
environment
we
that,
want. So
yeah, and it's like, yes, we're all designers and potentially we could be competing for business, but at the end of the day, there's enough business out there, and if it's the right fit for you and for the client, that's going to
that's
be the
what's going
best
to be.
marriage
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
So when I reach out to a designer, another designer in another city, because I have a project there, it never feels like I'm stepping on their toes. It always feels like they're wanting to help because of
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
space that you have created
Well,
for
I
us all.
hope that that's what's going on, because I mean, we really want our designers to recognize. I think that's who we attract to, because we attract the type of designer that wants to communicate with one another. We first started, I think that we didn't really know, you know, I came from a different industry too. So I mean, like I was a newbie when I started an interior design community, frankly. I was I came from the art world, and I was very into web marketing and SEO. I was building a website. So I was like very buried in like how social media works, how websites work, how we get traffic, happen. And I knew that that was information designers needed too. So I was started sharing
Yeah.
information and like, this is how you do this. This is how you build a link back. This is what this is happening. This is how this is happening. Like I was the first person was like, how's this not great? This is why. You know what I mean? Like,
You know, it's wild. Once you understand some of those things, it really frustrates you when it doesn't happen. Does it
yeah.
ever frustrate
Oh my
you?
gosh.
It's like
Yeah.
even like if I've been, websites will reach out to me, they're like, hey, we're gonna publish your work and yada yada. And I'm like, please put a link back.
Yeah.
Google loves that, or like
Yeah.
SEOs love that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've actually had some people tell me, oh, well, we don't do that. And
Oh,
it's like,
tough.
then don't use my stuff
Yeah.
because it's like this is serving you, but we're supposed to be helping each other out.
I know. I know.
Because like if you
it's so
if you
crazy.
publish me and you put a link to my website or to my Instagram or to whatever, I'm gonna be sharing it. I'm
Yeah.
gonna be bringing business like traffic to you as well.
Obviously. Yeah.
So it's
We
interesting
link
when it's
everybody.
one way.
Yeah, we link
Yeah.
everybody, and and we hope people link us, you know what I mean? Like, but it's a should be like everything else, this reciprocal relationship. Hello, like
Yeah.
we're in here.
Hello.
It's
Yeah.
social media. It's supposed to be social, like
So yeah.
you're not supposed to be mean
This
media.
isn't like this isn't a TED talk. I'm not here to just listen. I
Yeah,
want to interact.
exactly, exactly. So we sort of, I think I didn't know that that was what was happening. And so being naive, I was just like, this is how you do this. And people were like, this is crazy. This girl is giving free information. And I remember people being like very way back in the day suspicious about it. It's like,
Mhm.
what does she really want?
Well, I think I knew about y'all for a while, and I was super suspicious for the longest time,
I
and then I feel like there's like the maybe okay, I'm really excited because I love like
yeah,
so I bet how it starts is like who is this?
yeah.
It's the
What is
curiosity
it?
phase,
Yeah,
right? And then it's the okay, well, I'll just observe
yeah,
phase,
yeah, yeah.
like
The same
kind of like
people
you're in the
too big to the
Serengeti or
group.
something, like watching
Yeah.
the herds. And then it's like, okay, now I'm gonna participate, and then you're like, wow, I'm pot committed. This is
Yeah,
great.
this is so freaking great. I think that that's a little bit, and luckily we got some designers of the old guard that were, very well known, like really, interested in learning, that were part of the social media wave from the very beginning, like 12 years ago, that are still part of the community today and lead, like, I think give us legitimacy, which is really fantastic because they're like, no, this is the best thing. This is what really connected me. But it's really crazy to me that there were people in this industry for, 40 years before they found interior design community. And they will say to me that this is the first time they've ever felt like connected to
Nice.
designers. That's
That's gotta
nuts.
make you feel so good, Lauren.
I don't I think it became addiction for me more than anything else because I never intended for interior design community to become like anything other than like a fun little group online with a couple hundred people in it, and the fact that it literally took over my life was because all of you needed it so much. And
Well, and now you get a constant stream of dopamine hits, so
I
you're
do.
living large.
I do I guess, but I tell my husband, I'm like, I that's the part I hate the most because I'm like, I'm one of those people who is not super comfortable with like compliments and
Mm.
and praise. And so getting that on a regular basis, like, "You're so amazing, you're so bit." I'm just like, "Oh, gross, stop." I think I just can't stand it. I love everything else
Just
about
say
IDC except that
thank
part.
you.
You know? I love, like, the techie part. I love the data part. I love connecting people. My, like, literal favorite thing is honestly when you all get together besides like, outside of like, the fact that you just told me that you have connected with the designers outside of this and have talked to each other and remain friends. Like that's my favorite part. I don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Yeah, or it's like, "Hey, I'm gonna be in the city for a day. Do you wanna grab
I
lunch?"
love it.
Kinda thing.
You
Yeah.
always have to, and you have to promise me, all of you, that you'll send me pictures when you do that because it's like my favorite thing. I don't care about
We
the frame.
should. There's gotta be like a hashtag,
Yeah,
like
like we're
IDC
together.
pics or
Yay.
IDC on the go.
Yes, yeah. I've had like a few that have been in weddings together, and like I've had
Wow.
a few go on vacations together. Those are my favorite. Like I'm like, you guys are actually friends. This is happening. I just got one the other day. Two of the designers went to lunch. I'm like, I love it. I love
Love
it.
that.
I love it. But wonder what it was that was a turning point for you in your new city. Like, what was that feeling like you got accepted? What was that moment?
I think it was when I was at a industry event and I was introducing myself and someone went, "Oh, I know who you are. I follow you on Instagram," or, "Oh, I know that da 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 da." And it's
Yeah.
like, "Oh." And so like
Because you're
those
so
little
lovely
moments
and
kept
charming. I
happening.
feel like you would fit in instantly. It's so crazy
Like,
to
so
me.
sidebar, my husband will say all the time, he's like, because I'm the kind of person, it's like I've never not known a friend, right?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
me and this plant will be best friends by
yeah,
the end of the day.
sure.
And that's just, I'm very much,
When you say 5
bring
years,
joy.
that is blowing my mind when I'm thinking of
Yeah.
who you are. I'm like, "No
Yeah.
way. That
Yeah.
that
So
stinks."
it can feel discouraging. And I knew a lot of people. Like it didn't take me 5 years to make
Sure,
friends. It
sure.
took me
Yeah.
5 years to feel the community. But it's yeah, so I forgot the question. I just got
That must
excited
have
about
been a
the
struggle. So
yeah.
I'm especially for someone so, like, lovely and sweet, I imagine it
Yeah.
must have felt a little like the doors are closed and you're just trying to
Yeah.
knock your way in.
It definitely we were talking about egos earlier. It definitely knocked my ego down a little bit.
I bet, like,
But
"Hello,
no,
I'm
but oh,
wonderful.
the
How do you
turning
not
point.
know?" You know what I mean?
Yeah. But the turning point, other turning point moments were when developers and builders started to reach out to me as
Oh,
well.
yeah, yeah.
Because I do a lot of new
New construction,
construction,
yeah.
full home remodels. I do a lot of furniture packages as well. And, when other like developers that are known in the community reached out to me saying, "Hey, I'd love to also get to know you." That felt nice.
Wonderful.
Because I was, I did reaching out, but it's interesting. I'm not someone who is great at reaching out to like cold call, so to say. Like, hey, who do you use for your design? And, what are your pain points? How can I be of service for like maybe future projects? I don't do that stuff. Like that is not my forte. My forte is in person, like face to face.
Right.
And so when I'm face to face, I love it. And what also helped, what also took a while to build that community here was right when I started building that community is January of 2020. We all know what was happening, right?
Yeah.
Or what was coming down the pipeline. And so that also, it hurt a lot of the industry
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
various ways. And the
Yes.
social aspect was a huge way also.
Right,
And so that's why it took me a little longer than I had
right.
hoped.
And
So because
there is a
you couldn't
whole
build.
situation in Portland too, where I mean, it's very liberal, but there's a weird section of it that is going like where anti-homelessness and like things that are going
Yeah.
on that I think that people were very.
Very NIMBY, not
Yes.
my backyard. We
Yes.
want to help people, but yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that
But I
feeling.
feel like that's in a lot most major cities, right?
Yeah.
Because most major cities are lean more towards the socially liberal.
Yeah.
And so, but it's sometimes it can be performative in all of the cities.
Right.
And so I
Right.
definitely you definitely see it and feel it.
Yeah, yeah. It's curious to me that now I know that there are some lake communities around there, like designers I know that have had successful businesses there, done like lake community properties and really expanded out. Have you expanded out at all beyond
Yeah,
the
so
city?
it's interesting. So Portland itself is already a hard space to get into as a
Sure.
designer.
Yeah.
And then you go to like Lake Oswego is a big
Yes.
community
Right.
it's around it. They are their own microcosm of this. So it's like it is even harder to bust into that. So I've had a couple of projects there, but they're usually from people coming from out of town.
Right.
But interestingly enough, when I first got here, my strategy was to just dive right in, get into the community. I knew I was capable and able to do all of these things. And I had, the organization, the talent, and the chops, right? And then about that 2 year in mark, I completely shifted my entire strategy being in a new city. And I shifted to other new people coming into the city
Ah. That's
because
not a bad strategy at all.
it's not, well, and I thought like if people already are from here and live here, the likelihood of them who are in that, able to hire a designer bracket, they have probably already hired a designer who's from here before. hopefully they've had a great experience and they're going to go back to that designer.
Sure, sure.
So I thought, well, if someone's moving from California, you can't say that word sometimes, but if someone's moving from California or we have a lot of people from Texas who move here, a lot of people from, Chicago or New York, when someone from out of town is moving here, what do?
Right.
They go to their search bar and they search interior designers in Portland.
Yes.
And so I shifted my strategy to be, I want to show up first in front of them.
Right.
And then, because if I show up in front of them and I talk to them, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to
You got
land
it.
the
You
client
got it. Yeah.
because, yeah. And so I knew that. And so I shifted to, okay, use me. Like, I'm
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
from here. I have contacts and connections here. And that was the other reason I didn't take on clients for the first 2 years I was here, is I wanted to build my connections and my network. So I already had the trades to go to
Right.
prior. Because, in this world, you get one chance sometimes, especially when
Sure.
you're in like the higher end side of design. I didn't want to mess it up on my first project. So I
Right.
wanted to have all those people I could lean on to make me look really good too. And so I shifted my strategy like 2 years into, I'm going to focus on, that family moving from Ohio,
Right.
not the person who is an Oregonian who's
Yes.
been here for
Yeah.
their whole lives. And it turned out really well.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that was a great strategy.
I think it would be. I think that's actually a missing component, I think, of a lot of interior designers really understanding SEO. I mean, I've tried to beat that horse a lot in my career. I
Yeah.
feel like I constantly bang my head against the wall trying to say like, look, more important than Instagram, honestly, more important than anything is your like Google business profile and your
Yeah.
website and your email list. I will poll designers on a continual basis about what is, your biggest, how do you land your clients the most? And most of them will say referrals, most of them will. But then you'll ask, 90% will say referrals, and then 90% will say they don't do an email list. And I'm just like, please just,
I
I don't, it's not, I have
I
no
don't do
skin
it.
in the
I don't do
game.
it. I don't do an email list either.
See, I know it drives me so bananas. And I get why you don't want to, but I'm like, once a month. It doesn't honestly have to be an every week thing or a spammy
Yeah.
thing or whatever. But I mean, like once a month, you can put together an email. There are like
Oh,
literal
I am
plugins
a
for your
firm
website, right?
believer in that it
It
works. It
works.
works. I get it.
It works.
But it's, the whole going out and, saying, "Oh, I want business. I want business." Like, that's so uncomfortable for
So
a
I
lot of
don't think you
people.
should do that.
And
I don't
no,
think
no, no, and
that
I wouldn't. No,
I
no.
don't think that any designer should do I want business. I think what they should think about is like what your clients, you can think of the top of your head like what they love and
Mhm.
what's around, you know, what's going on in your area. And that should be
Yeah.
what the email is. It's not about selling them
What's
on the
interesting is
great
that you
design.
might be converting me here,
Yeah,
Laurie,
I know.
because when kind of going back to when my husband and I were backpacking for a year and a
Yeah.
half, I actually, I didn't have like a non-compete with my previous firm because I refused to sign
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But I was their top designer, so I definitely played into that.
Yeah.
Played into the mentality, it's like, "Fire me then." No, but, I actually don't believe in non-competes. Like, my junior designer, I didn't make her sign one.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
if my clients come to you
Well, they're
afterwards,
not
I've
they're
done
not
something
enforceable
wrong.
anymore by law, so
Exactly,
out there.
exactly. And and I don't even have a non-compete for my trades because 'cause I'm like, if that's me actively potentially taking business from that tile that I like as
Right,
well. So,
right.
I find that morally wrong for myself to do. And so, but anyway, so I had all of my clients that I had built up over a decade, all their emails. I compiled like an email list. And while we were gone, every like 3 months, we would just send out here's what we've been doing.
Right.
So it's like the last 3 months, we've been to these 5
Oh
countries
my
and
gosh,
we've did this
pictures and
thing
oh,
and
yeah,
yada yada. And that was it.
yeah.
It was just like, here's what we're doing. And then about 2 or 3 months before we came back to the States, it was, a play on the Eddie Murphy movie, Coming to America,
Yeah, I
you
love
know?
it.
And it was saying like, we're making our way back and we booked a transatlantic cruise on this day and we'll be back in Boston on this day kind of thing. And so we just kept them informed. And I kid you not, 72 hours after we landed in the United States, after being gone for almost a year and a half, I had 3 clients reach out to me.
Oh, I bet. I bet. Yeah.
They were just like, "Hey, we see you're back." And one of them said, "I've been waiting for you until you got back," and handed me a $250,000 project.
Love it.
Like day 3, I was
Yeah.
back. So yes, keeping people informed works.
That's all you have to do is like, here's
Yeah.
what's going on in my world, or here's something I thought was interesting for you. Here's a cute TikTok. Here's
Oh
playlist
my
I
God, I'm just gonna
made.
add this
You know what I
to
mean?
Camille's to-do list.
Just fun,
Like, "Camille,
fun
can you do this?"
things like that, I feel like designers miss the idea that like, and you are very technical people and you're very, you're artists, but people do view you as the person that they know that has a certain sense of style and a certain sense of like living. And I think playing into that a little bit, like, here's a cool playlist, and here's a market I found that I think is really cute, and here's a vacation, like a little Airbnb that is so adorable that we stayed in and that is driving distance from where you live. These are things that are useful, that I think that your
Yeah.
community of people would love to know that you experience in your life, and this is how you go to the beach, and this is how the restaurants you think are really fantastic, and you know
Honestly, I think after this podcast, I'm adding to our to-do list. We have a
yeah,
shared to-do list
yeah,
that like, "Hey, let's add this to like your weekly thing
yeah,
to,"
just
or,
once, even honestly, I'd be happy if it's once a month, honestly, like, it keeps
yeah,
people like, "Oh, okay," and then when it doesn't have to be I think that's where the disconnect is. It doesn't have to be like, "We're open to projects, and we
yeah,
are looking for
yeah.
here, we have a special on color analysis." I'm just like, "Ugh,
Oh,
gross."
honestly, I hate specials. I hate when
I do
people are like,
too.
and I have been victim of this myself. Like when I first started, I'm like, "Oh, this is what people do. Like, I'm
You're
gonna
'cause
do
you
like
get them from
25% off
stores,
custom
right?
draperies."
Yeah,
And I'm like, "Yeah."
yeah. No, they're correct.
And I did it once and it felt weird
And
and I was like, "I'm
cringy
not
and
doing it."
awful, and it doesn't have to be that. It could be literally like, this is a playlist that I think is really fun, and I think you might like it.
You know that you're kind of tapping into that younger generation vibe right now, Laurie. I love it.
I know. I'm cool.
Are you Gen Z? Are you like
No, I have children that are Gen Z.
what is like that's the junior designer in my
And they
office.
think I'm
She is like
lame,
that.
so I
Yeah,
could
she's like
definitely
that Gen Z,
but
like
I actually
cusp
I'm
Gen Z
on social
millennial.
media all the time, so I definitely know what becomes popular, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
fast. I'm always like, "Oh, this song is gonna be really hot," or, you know, I'm always
Okay,
this
so
phrase.
do you ever having Gen Z kids though, do you ever feel do they say things that just like feel like a knife to your like
Oh,
your
yeah.
age back? You're like,
Oh,
"Oh,
yeah.
how dare
Oh,
you
yeah.
not?"
The worst well, so the best and worst were when, my daughter was younger, her teachers would tell me multiple teachers told me that they would check her tags because she had the coolest clothes, and I was like, "I am so cool." It was, like, the best compliment anyone ever gave me, honestly. I was like, "I do dress her." I love fashion, so I, like, go through and find
Mhm.
really cool, unique pieces. And my daughter simultaneously, probably like a few years later, said I was telling her about something that I thought was really cool, and she goes, "Just so you know, my friends don't think that you what you think is cool." And I was like, "Oh,
Alright,
it
so
still hurts. It literally still hurts."
that's
I'm like,
I
I'm
feel like
still offended by it. And
we're swapping trauma stories here. So the biggest travesty that happened in my office was I was sitting there and it was one of those like a stressful email had just happened and like something was going wrong in a project and the world was spinning around me and it's like, you know what? I just need to listen to like an emotional woman rock star
yeah,
singing and I just need to sing my heart out and I put on You Oughta Know
right?
and Camille said, "Who is that?" And I fell out of my chair dramatically. Like, I legit just dramatically fell out of my chair, and I'm like, "How do you not know who this is?" And so she, like, gets out her little phone and, like, to do the, listen to the song and tell me what it is, and she went, "It's Alanis Morissette." I fell again,
I
and I'm
know.
like, "It's Alanis Morissette."
If
And I
there
was like,
ha
"How do you not know who Alanis Morissette is?" And she went, what year did it come out? And I said, and she's like, I was 2. And I'm like, oh
Oh,
my
that's why.
gosh.
And you're like, "No." Oh, your parents still
Still
your parents still
to
kind of
this
screwed
day.
you. So, just
Yeah.
FYI, my kids know who Alanis Morissette is. So,
Yeah.
but it's a heartbreaker when they don't think you're cool. Although I
Yeah.
introduced them to songs, like, when Messy came out, I was like, "This song is so cool." And, like, they hadn't heard it yet. And so I was like, "It's Lola Young is really cool. I really like her."
Yeah. Just wait. She's going to be a
She's
rock
gonna
star.
be
She's the
so
next Amy
cool.
Winehouse.
Exactly, and they're like, "Wait a minute, she is cool." And then, like, 2 days
No,
later,
no.
they're
They
like,
follow up with who's Amy Winehouse?
"Yeah, who's Amy Winehouse?" And so it's that's those are the kind of hurts that you don't forget, is that you're like, "You're rude, you're rude, you're rude." They also, like, but their friends all are like, think I'm cool, so
Mhm.
that works. I can lord that over them as much as possible.
They probably think it's really cool. You also have like 100,000 Instagram followers.
They are a little bit impressed by that, I'm not gonna lie, because they
Yeah.
don't have that. So they're like, "Mom is kind of
I'm over here with
cool.
my
She to
4,000
tell
feeling
you."
fabulous.
You know? But I'm not one of those people who, like, I am not in any way doing this for me, like, so because weirdly, it was, like, really for the designers, and so and I also think it's kind of I have a little I don't know, I don't even know, I feel nervous about saying this, but I have a little, like,
You can cut it out later.
observation about interior designers that I think is kind of, like, funny. I love, love, love designers, and I really support all of you, but there's a section of designers who kind of believe their own press that I'm like, "Okay, sit down." You know what I mean? Like, "All right." Nobody really knows who any of us are, right? I mean, out there in the real
Yeah.
world, like, you could be Nate Berkus. None of my friends know who Nate Berkus is. Like, honestly, I
Yeah.
mean, that
I think the only like the like people know who like the Fab Five are. Like they know Jeremiah more than Nate now,
yeah,
because he's
yeah. Exactly. And so I'm like, that's a little bit, I think that that's kind of not translating out there in the real world.
Mhm,
Like, the design industry, we kind of believe in this celebrity. And I get it. I mean, I think it's part of the ego thing. And we really need designers
mhm.
need to have a strong ego. And I fully, fully support that. But I also think that, if you get to the point where you're at all unkind to others, you're like, "Oh, who are you?" And like, I don't support that. I'm like,
Oh, I
I don't love
will
that
nip
thing.
that. And earlier when you were saying you're building community and you love that aspect of it, and you love when people connect, and it kind of ties into what you just said. Like anytime I have a designer reach out to me, or even someone who's a student, or they're like, hey, do you have any positions available? And even if I don't have a position available or an internship or anything like that that I can do at the time, I will always say, "Hey, I don't have that opportunity right now. However, if you want to grab a coffee,
Yes.
let's go spend an hour and
Yeah.
pick my brain." And like, I would love to get to know you. And that's actually how Camille became my junior designer.
Oh,
Was she
wow.
just reached out to me, and I didn't have time. Like, I was like, "No, I'm not really looking for it." And we got a coffee and connected, and then we connected a second time very shortly, and it's like, actually, like, I think I can give you some hours. Let's like see how this works. And
Sure.
she's been with me for a year now. And so, and I also feel like if other people in the industry didn't take the time to water the soil that I was growing under,
Right.
I wouldn't be where I am right now
Yeah.
either.
I think that's
So it's
hugely
almost like that's
important.
how I give back. Yeah.
That is hugely I love that you said that because I think there's so many people who get those messages and are like, "I can't believe they even dared to do that." And why are they like, why would you're picking my brain. Why would I do that to help someone else be competition to me down the road? You know what I mean? Things like that. That mental
That's such a
block.
like glass half empty
I
kind of
know, the
mentality. I'm like
scarcity
glass half
mindset,
full,
right?
like,
Like,
yeah.
absolutely. And I will meet groups of students on a regular basis. We have students that message me and they'll ask me which schools to go to and what they should do after to find a job and how to manage careers and what their first job should look like. And I will tell them, I'll even, I have a strong position on this where I'm like, go work at Home Depot in a kitchen center more before you go work at like
Mhm.
Pottery Barn because you're gonna get more, like,
Yeah.
experience with
I
drawing.
there is
Anything that you get experience with, like, space linen,
yeah.
that's what you should do. Like,
So I actually like didn't start off in this industry by having this incredibly successful design firm, right?
Right,
Like I did
right,
not start this. I graduated during the 0809 crisis.
right.
Like I did not have a job right after school. The first, I think, year or year and a half after school, I worked part-time at that showroom
Yes,
because I worked all through college at this showroom. And then they said, we can't offer you a full-time position, but we can offer you part-time. So I worked part-time there. I worked at Z Gallery,
yep,
if you know what Z
yeah,
Gallery
yeah,
is. And so I worked part-time at Z Gallery. And then I also worked part-time bartending. Okay.
right,
So
yeah,
customer interaction, bartending, customer interaction, and learning how to sell Z
yes,
Gallery.
yeah,
And then also the showroom, I would work the show. So I learned how to sell and interact with a whole bunch of different people.
right,
So it's all those skills that you learn
right.
that then help you grow into
Who you are, and that's
who you are, who you
huge.
can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I will when I first the career I had before this industry was in the arts, and that job, well, it was in printmaking, fine art and printmaking. And I mentored with like the people, the person who founded that industry, like fine art, Giclée industry, like
Wow.
he was part of the crew that invented the term. Like they were like they started this whole movement of fine art printmaking and learned a ton. But when I first started there, I was a temp. Like I was a temp when I like my
There you
very
go.
first day. I was out of college. I was a temp there, and then they liked me, so they hired me, and then literally moved up from like receptionist all the way to being a salesperson. And
And did you have people along the way who were
oh,
who was watering
oh,
your soil as
absolutely,
well to help?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was weeding some out too. Watering and
You have
weeding.
to do that. You have to.
Nope, not you. But you,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, and it's important to for us, as now the waterers
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do that.
yeah,
And it's also important for us to, be realistic to people
yeah.
and set those expectations to what could be realistic more in the beginning
Oh,
because,
absolutely.
kind of
I
tying
don't
it
lie
into
to
the
people when
celebrity.
I have so many
No.
designers that, you have to imagine the world is a big place. And so I have designers that reach out to me from every corner of the world. And I'm realistic with them if they're in a market that I know is troublesome. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
you're in an uphill battle if you're in somewhere in South Dakota trying to be a
Yeah.
luxury interior designer. There's just not a lot of projects there,
Yeah.
So location is part of success in this industry. And that's just
Yeah. Well,
fact.
and like also what you said is, there's this kind of like celebrityization of the interior designers. Like we're all gonna be on TV and we're all gonna have the highest end clients and get to do all this stuff. And
Well, there's a myth that that's even something
sometimes,
that's worth anything. That's the other part of it is
yeah.
like HGTV is not well known for being the highest paying job out there. I hate to tell you.
Right.
You
And
know?
so yeah, so people like kind of like fantasize what it can be.
Right.
And it's our job to say there's more than just that.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
when I talk to some students, it's like you don't have to actually be an interior designer.
No,
You can be a sales rep. You can be a flooring designer. You can just do kitchen design at Home Depot.
you can do
Like I'm part of
landscape.
this.
Yeah, there's
Yeah, you
all
can do
sorts.
landscape.
Yeah.
I can't do landscape. I always say I know how to make it look pretty. I don't know if it's going to live. But I'm part of this contractors corner. Like we meet once a month at 7 a.m. You know, in deep east, Portland, which is like 30 minutes from my house. But it's all of these different types of people. And in that group, there is a Home Depot kitchen designer.
Yeah.
There is a tile setter. There's all these different people. And even like the person who works for the stone company who goes out and sells the natural stone or is the connector between us and the fabricators. So
Right.
there's so much in our industry more than just what you see on
Oh, and
HGTV or
respected
on those
too.
design shows.
Like I just went to an event. Actually, she was at our dinner. Do you remember Denise Buchko? She was at our dinner.
Yes.
So she is the NKP president in Chicago, and she asked me to come
Chicago,
speak
yes.
there. So I did. And she works for the NKBA president, and she's amazing, by the way. Love, love, love her. There isn't anyone that is a better connector in that area. Lovely. Everybody adores her. And she works for a stone fabricator. So and you can build a magnificent career, well respected. I've
Mhm.
known Denise for years and years and years. Like, she's been a respected person in this industry as long as I've known her. She knows everybody. And, she was in cabinetry. Now she's in, closets and cabinetry and that kind of thing. And now she's in stone. And, that still has a huge role, in the associations and, that you don't have to be a kitchen designer to be a president of, a major metropolitan areas NKBA chapter or ASID
Yeah.
chapter, or be involved with interior design community or whatever that might be. You can find roles for yourself and build authority for yourself in anywhere that you are in the world, really.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, part of the success that you're saying that you built for yourself, and that I think is true for most designers, is you have to get rid of the idea that you can't just take it. You just can grab it. You can just build it for yourself, and you don't need to ask permission to build this
Mm-mm.
for yourself. And I think that's what you did. Was, I'm coming to this new area. I don't know anyone. Being friendly wasn't like immediately building that connection for you. And so you decided, you've still figured out the way to build authority for yourself. And you did that
Yeah.
through SEO. You did that through coming up in search for designers and finding the newbies that were just like you, that were coming to the area. That is brilliant, because a lot of people would have given up. First year it didn't
Hmm.
work. A lot of people would have said, that is when, oh, this is just hitting me too much. I was already successful in Dallas. This is a blow to my ego I can't take. I'm going to have to do something different. This isn't working. You didn't accept no for the answer. You just kept going. You worked probably very hard on keeping the clients in Dallas happy and across the country, and flying planes and making yourself a living while you pursued this. And I think that's really remarkable, Kevin. Like, I think that's what people need to do. Is, you are
Yeah.
going to face, because we're all going into this really
Yeah.
tricky time right now, right? I mean,
Yes.
we're going into a really
Well,
time.
we're going into a really tricky time. We're going into, the T word, the tariff word,
Yes,
that's,
yes,
and the T word, the tricky word. Like, we're going into like times that feel, was interviewed by Business at Home, and I was
right.
telling them that like, this kind of feels like in 2021 when, the Suez Canal was blocked up and there were hundreds and hundreds of ships off the, LA coast who couldn't dock. And like, all of these like lead times are getting longer and people are pushing shipments out because they're hoping the tariffs are gone by the time they have to pay them when it gets here. And so there's just a lot of rockiness. And then in addition to that, stock markets are getting
Yes.
wrecked day or up, and it's such a roller
Yeah.
coaster that I've even had a couple of projects where they say, hey, we're going to put a pause right now. We hope it's a temporary pause because, we were in the bidding phase. We were about to get started. And they're like, well, ooh, overnight our portfolio tumbled.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's happening to a lot of
Oh,
designers, if not
absolutely. I
every
heard from one
designer, whether
today.
they realize
Yeah.
it or not,
Yeah.
And it's, how do we pivot, or how do we stay relevant, or how do we make sure that our businesses are healthy enough to weather storms like this? And part of that is also sometimes setting your ego aside. So like, when I moved to this city, day one, I wasn't getting, 10,000 square foot custom home builds.
No.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, I'll just do your bathroom remodel.
Right.
It's setting up those goodwill points and good karma into the universe.
Right.
And then you prove, you have to prove yourself.
Right.
Even me, who had proven myself somewhere else, had to reprove myself, and setting that ego aside to do that. And I feel like there's going to be, kind of in this uncertainty, a lot of people who do have resets where maybe they've had this built-in clientele that have come back over and over and over, but maybe they moved to another state, or they're putting projects on hold, or this or that. And it's time to dig in and like start getting other business,
That is
new
so
business,
true.
different business, diversifying, and thinking of all
Diversifying.
your
Yeah.
options.
I actually have an opportunity that we're going to be sending out an email soon. I work with a company that I think you've met them too, because yes, you met Owen and at KBiz. He runs all
Mhm.
mine, and he is, so they originally started as with builders. So they turned model homes into shoppable showrooms, and they supplied furniture to those model homes to these builders across the country. And he's works with like the top 5 builders in the country, plus lots of smaller builders. And he's got a few builders that have not high profit projects, I don't think, but projects that like for full model home builds, you know? So, and there's a number of cities like this, they're big, big builders that have like across the country projects. And so we're fortunate enough to have been partnering with them for now 3 years, 2, 3 years. And we're going to be able to like press those out to all the designers. Like, here's some jobs in this city, and here's some jobs in this city, and here's some jobs in this city. And like, I'll be able to throw out job possibilities during this time, which is I'm so grateful that I have something to give
Yeah.
to designers right now because I've been hearing that your story is exactly the same as what I'm hearing from. I actually heard from a designer today who's like, they had all their projects canceled and they're like
Oh,
thinking
that's heartbreaking.
they think they have to close. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I get it. Like, I mean, these are times
Yeah.
when, if you're relying on yourself for your income, and there are some designers that aren't. Like, I mean, let's be real about it. There are some designers that their significant other is really paying a portion of their bills, but there's a lot of designers, they're the
Mhm.
sole breadwinner too in their house.
Yeah.
So it's a
Well,
tricky,
that's how
tricky
my
time.
husband and I operate. Like if, anything could happen, like he
Yeah.
could die tomorrow. I've got to be okay. So
Right.
this isn't just a hobby, but some people have, it is kind of like more of a hobby. And I think that's a whole different podcast, I
Right.
think.
Right.
Um,
Right. But
but
having a list,
just having a living. And, I would say, not that I'm anyone to give advice, but to give advice to people who are struggling. It's, we touched on the diversifying, which is really important. And I think even though these, two of my projects are like, hey, let's put a pause on it, I'm not stressed and worried because I am so diversified, right?
right.
I don't just do big remodels. I don't just do new construction. I don't just do kitchens. I don't just do commercial. I do it all. And
Right.
so like if my commercial design clients kind of start to do this, well then these clients start to, perk up over here and vice versa. So
Right.
where I'm seeing a huge like growth in my own personal business is on my commercial side. I do multifamily living
Right.
and do all like the amenity spaces. And, as the price of houses have gone up, people can't afford to buy, so they rent. And so that sector of the commercial industry has exploded, which has been
Yes.
great for me because I also do that.
Right.
And so while two projects that are residential might say, hey, let's put a pause, all these other things are still taken off. So
Right.
it's really important to kind of diversify yourself. I mean, if you feel comfortable, not everyone
Yes.
feels
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know a lot of designers who don't do furniture,
Right.
which is baffling to me.
Right.
It's like
Oh, I
you
know.
should do furniture and you should do kitchens.
Obviously,
Like, why won't you do
and
it?
that's another thing. I mean, I'm not shouting out all night for that reason, but like honestly, go to them because you'll
Yeah.
make a profit. I just talked to someone yesterday who was very upset that the designers, her client went to Pottery Barn and got her same discount. I'm like, why are you shopping at Pottery Barn? Like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Here's a resource where you can make money. Don't
Yeah.
shop there. I mean, they're gonna do that, of
And there's
course.
so many resources out there now that
Yeah.
if you don't have the buying power to open up all of your
Account.
own
Yeah.
direct
Yeah.
accounts, because not every like if you're just getting into furniture, like
Sure.
I've been doing furniture for almost 20 years. So it's like I have direct accounts,
Yeah.
I have the buying power and all this, but not everyone does.
No.
But there's other in like services out there
Yes.
that almost create like a collective. So now you have
Yes.
buying, you're still not getting the best price because that company is taking a little bit for their profit, but it makes you so much more competitive
Right.
than just going to Pottery Barn or
Right.
going to any of the big box stores that don't necessarily they have designer programs, but they don't have that
Yeah.
same relationship with the design community that makes it feel like we're supporting each other,
Right. Right.
And so there's
Absolutely.
other things out there. And
I love that
I'm
you
sure
said
you're
that. It's
familiar
so
with
true.
a
I
lot.
know I know collectives that I trust. We just had Heather on from the Designer Collective, and but I wouldn't put people over. And I know it's shooting myself in the foot with sponsored dollars, but I wouldn't put myself. I would tell no designer to go to Wayfair or
Yeah,
Pottery Barn. Come on, like you're not making any money. And
yeah,
you're not serving yourself in building a relationship with those brands. Those brands will never have heard of you. One of the reasons I liked
yeah,
mine from the very beginning was that he made those relationship why I was excited about it was he makes those relationships transparent. So he was telling me like our original agreement was like, okay, if a designer comes in and they're brand new, they're starting out. They get an account with him, they start to do really good business with Curry, and then they want their own account with Curry, Curry will know who they are and how much they've spent. Like, it'll be
Yeah.
transparent. Like, that's never gonna happen with Pottery Barn, Wayfair, or anybody. Like, that's
No.
not gonna happen.
And I always say, like, those big box stores and Wayfair and all those places, like, there is a place
There is.
for those,
Yeah.
but
Last
don't
minute.
let that be
Yeah.
your only place. So
Well,
it's like I
yeah.
buy my fair share from, especially on the professional side for some of the commercial jobs, from Wayfair,
Sure.
right? I buy my, I if I have a client come to me and they're like, I love this chair from RH or from from, wherever it could be from, and they're dead set on getting that, I will help facilitate that
Right.
as well.
Right.
But then it's our job as designers to say, because hopefully we've built that trust and it's in our contracts that if I'm procuring it, there's time, there's effort, there's things that go into it. I'm
Liability,
putting
all of it.
all the liability, I'm putting my markup on top of that,
Yeah.
And we have to feel confident as designers to say, you're paying for a service.
Right.
That is part of the service. So while I don't love to shop retail, in those moments that I do, I've already had that
Right.
discussion with my clients.
Right.
And, again, probably another podcast on like how people get shopped and this and that. It's,
Oh, yeah.
I I say from day one, it's like every single thing I show you, every single thing I show you, if you do enough digging and research, you may be able to find it a little cheaper somewhere,
Right.
right?
Right.
But potentially, not all the time, but potentially, if you put enough time and effort into things, you might be able to save yourself a couple $100. But how much time is it taking you to get there? And how is that degrading our respect for one another?
Right.
And just having that open conversation on like day one with clients, I will say I have been shopped maybe once in 20 years.
Right.
It's like people hear that and they're like, you're lying. It's like, no, like I've had clients come to me saying, hey, I found this rug from XYZ that you're showing me. It's $150 cheaper online. And I just explained to them, this online is just doing direct to consumer. They don't have overhead. They don't have someone to pay. They don't have the same business insurance and an office and a this and a that. And they don't have this personal relationship with you. And so if it's worth you saving $150 on this rug, by all means, please go for it.
Right.
But I would hope that you would respect me enough to let that $150 profit or whatever go to paying my bills and to being able to provide these services to you. And I just have an honest conversation with
Yeah.
them. And that's why they don't shop me. And when they hear it that way, they go, oh, because people don't know what they don't know, right?
Right.
They don't know that's how we make our money.
Right.
That's how we go on our vacations. That's how we pay our mortgages. That's how we
Right.
pay our employees. And all these things.
Right.
And when you just explain that to them, it's like they understand.
Yeah. I think that, if they also could find it where it's more expensive too. Like the opposite
Exactly.
side works too. I mean, you could scour the internet
Yeah.
and find it that it's more expensive, but you're not going to be coming to me and telling me you want to buy it from them if it's more expensive. You're
Yeah.
only doing it for the things you're finding that are cheaper. And,
Yeah.
and you're eroding all the trust and profit that we've been building together, and why I took this job. You know what I mean? So,
Well, in
I
that
agree with
one
you.
client that I had do this to me over the 20 years, I remember I walked into their house and I'm like, oh, you start seeing the things. You're like, you did not buy this through me, or I didn't procure this, and you did all this other things on your own because they might have found it a little cheaper here or there or whatever. Guess what? I fired the client.
Yeah.
We don't work for them. We work with each other.
Right.
And it's a mutual respect. And if you're not going to mutually respect me, and this isn't going to work out.
Right.
And it's always weird firing a client. I've only ever fired like 3 clients in 20 years. And it's always a weird, feeling when you have to do it. But it always comes down to respect and trust has somehow is not being shown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that holding your boundaries is really important for your own self too. I mean,
And
it's
our
teaching
sanity.
yourself that this is where the line is,
Yeah.
and it's different for everybody, because there are designers that would walk into that room seeing those things purchased and say nothing, because they wouldn't have the guts to say anything. But I think we all have to find what that works for us as far as what's comfortable to say this is acceptable and this isn't, and And I want
And saying it
we're
in the right way
relationship.
too, right?
Yeah.
Not making them feel like crap that
Right,
they did
right.
this, but just educating them
Yeah,
that, hey, this is how it affects me.
right. This is how I make money.
You know?
You know,
Yeah.
like, yeah, absolutely. Well, on that note, this has been so lovely. I probably could talk to you 2 more hours, I swear, today.
I know, I
But
know.
we've reached our
Are we? Do I
hour.
need to go? Do I need to go change
Someone
shirts
needs
and
to
we can
do
just like
it.
record
Yeah,
another?
right? We have to do it. We have to do it. But we will have you back on again. I'm absolutely sure of that. We actually really should have you back on to talk about shopping because I think that that's a whole other conversation that happens to designers all the time. Is certainly now in an economy where we're gonna see a lot of people act a certain way. It's just,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, and yeah, you should have me back on for this because there's so many strategies and things you can
Yeah,
do to
yeah.
help just prevent being shopped in the first
I
place.
love it. I love
So
it. We will have you back on for that. And
yeah,
but it's been lovely. And we'll make sure that all of our members hear where to reach you, where to follow you, and learn more about connecting with you. Love it.
awesome. Thank
Uh,
you.